Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Sutala,
And I'm Sean Edward Phillips.
and we're here with Awaken the Species Book 4 discussion group. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And don't worry if you haven't been
Yeah.
reading the book. You don't have to have read it to watch the stream, but you can always go back and watch the archive videos, which are on the YouTube channel in a playlist that Sean was so kind to put them all in the same spot so they're easily findable.
Yep, that's on the Holistic Health and Healing YouTube page. The playlist is something creative like CwG Book 4.
Yeah. In fact, Captain Obvious Silver here. I will actually grab the link now that I'm thinking about it, and I will put the link to the playlist. So if you're watching and you want to catch up and see all the other talks that we've had about it, actually, was it just for CWG Book 4, or was it just under CWG?
I think it's all the CwGs that we've done. So it includes our regular monthly meetup.
That works. So let me grab that. And the way that this works is it's supposed to be a very interactive experience as we go through the book. If you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and make them, and we would be happy to speak to things in further detail and see where our conversation goes. But I got the playlist link, and I'm going to go ahead and post that real quick.
Yep. Of course, it's your contribution if you're listening or tuning in, or if you're catching this after, comments, greatly welcome. Certainly not required. You're welcome to just hang out and listen. But tonight we're kind of covering chapters 11 through 15 in CwG Book 4, Awaken the Species. And as Hank was saying, if you've missed a few of our chats about the book on chapters 1 through 10, that is available on the YouTube, which I believe Hank just linked in the comment section.
Yep, got it there for us. And that specifically is the playlist just for the CWG work. And the more recent things are all the book discussion group. And I'm just going to share this to a few other pages real quick. And then we'll be all set, good to go. Wish I could preemptively get all this done, but you can't share it like this until you actually have the stream going. So.
Yeah, so as you're kind of getting that sent out, so chapter 11 picks up on the end of chapter 10, which was really about highly evolved beings. I know it's been a couple weeks, Hank, since we've talked, but that was where the conversation ended last time we were on.
Yep, and I also have, if you're going to be following along with us, we actually have the digital book that we are going to share here. And then as we kind of skim through, we can point certain passages out and dive a little bit deeper in. But here we go with the cloud reader. Am I on the right one? Very good. I think I'm on the right page. Awaken the Species. Chapter 11. There we go.
Oh, you're in the right book, at least.
I was in the right book. Yes. Well, originally I wasn't. I was in the trilogy book, and that didn't work at all. So going through it, was there anything in particular that? Well, this chapter really starts out with Neil saying, "Hey, if we're awakening, like what exactly are we awakening to?"
Right. That is the question of this chapter. What is it that we're awakening to if we're awakening?
Yeah, and Neil was basically having a bit of concern, saying, "Well, because if you haven't read the chapters yet, he's talking a lot about highly evolved beings and highly evolved beings aiding humanity in really stepping into this new awakening and this new place of being." And Neil was a little bit concerned, saying, "Well, why is it we have to awaken to these other societies, these other beings that don't even live in our dimension, to their ideals?" And of course, the answer was, "Well, you don't." Like you can certainly embrace your own ideals and things. This is just a template. It's just a guideline perhaps to let you know of what the possibilities are.
Yeah. And the short answer to the question, what we're awakening to, is that it's really that there's only one energy in the universe. That was God's reply. And that energy is the energy of what humanity has called love. And it's really awakening to that idea. And as a follow up, there's a bit, I'm not sure if it's a follow up, but there's an extended response part of the answer where they go into a bit, or God replies back with a bit that like highly evolved societies or highly evolved beings that humanity is awakening towards being like a highly evolved species kind of deal. And part of that is that highly evolved beings, God says they don't have any violence in their society. And the idea of anger is not a thing that exists in highly evolved society, for lack of words. Um, and that's really because they know they can't be killed, um, because they realize that they are a spiritual being before they're a physical being. So there's absolutely nothing physical that could spiritually create a problem for them. So it's the idea that if you have all the time in the world, you can create and recreate anything that you'd like. And there's the quote, eternal life brings eternal peace.
So
Um,
there's a saying in the cosmos, eternal
yeah.
life brings eternal peace. And you know what this reminded me of when they were really getting this concept across? Have you seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray?
Truth be told, I have not seen it. I have heard people talk about it
Yeah.
multiple times.
So basically, every single day he wakes up, and no matter what he did in that day, it's always the morning of that day. And he even tries to kill himself, electrocute himself, do all these things. And every morning he wakes up, and it's always Groundhog Day. And through the whole thing, at first he was just being greedy or doing things that were very self first or selfish, I should say. And by the end, he was being helpful, and he was actually expressing love by helping everybody that he could in that little town. And it was when he stepped into that space that he evolved and was able to move on to the next day. But I thought it was a really cool parallel, because when he had the
Mm-hmm.
awareness that nothing could happen to him, that he was going to wake up and he was going to go on, he was able to shed all the anger, the fear, the violence that he had been embracing for a different possibility. So it really echoes well to the book. You're going to have to go watch the movie now, Sean.
Apparently, yeah, I'll have to go check it out. It actually sounds interesting the way you depicted it there. I usually just get the sense of things just being on a loop.
It's way more involved than that. And speaking of movies, you'll be happy to know I finally watched the first Avengers movie, just on a side note.
Oh, okay.
It
Now,
was
had you watched the films leading up to the Avengers film, or did you just jump right into the Avengers film?
just started with the Avengers, and that's where I started. But I will certainly follow your guidance if there was a certain order I should watch the rest of them in. But yeah,
Yeah,
it was pretty good. I was at the beginning I wasn't so keen on it, and then by the time we got to the middle of it, I was like, wow, this is awesome.
yeah, it's a bit of a slow start on it, um, for sure. Um, what else did you have on chapter 11? That's really most of what I had was kind of the summary of the chapter, and um, I enjoyed it. It was quick. It was easy. I personally got most of this chapter.
Yeah, I think that really this last little part here is probably worth mentioning, because it has the what
Yeah.
highly evolved beings are really after, which would they know they cannot lose their life for any reason or in any way, nor can they lose anything else of value to them, because nothing else is of value to them other than life itself. Their very existence, which they understand, is what provides them the opportunity for the only experience they desire. And Neil says, which is, and the experience of their divinity.
Hmm.
And this echoes the whole works of Neil Donald Walsh, where they say, in every moment of every day, strive to be the highest vibration, the next grandest vision that you ever held about yourself. And that's the stepping stone to really step into this, because as you continue to just strive for a greater you, eventually you become this highly evolved being. And that's where humanity is. We're striving for stepping into that.
Hmm. And divinity is the experience of one's own self. Um, so I'm sort of bringing together divinity or God. They kind of use they kind of use God as the point of God is to experience its own self, and in essence, that's what divinity is. So by stepping into yourself and expressing who you are is truly the highest form of your own divinity, and it's kind of that cool uh, duality, higher truth thing where the highest truths are somewhat paradoxical, where how can you be part of a God, experiencing yourself as God, and there's still a larger thing that is God, and it's like this kind of cool knowing idea that it's like you're just you're part of everything in oneness. It's cool.
Yeah, I like the yeah, we're both it's both true. Like we are all one and we're all separate, and they're both true because one's a duality truth and one's a absolute
Yeah.
truth. Fun stuff.
Well, the highest truth is that it's all a oneness,
Right.
and we're all experiencing a oneness in our own individual ways.
True that.
That is also part of the oneness. It's
And
very, very cool.
this was one other thing that I really like from this chapter when Neil basically says, "Well, you mean they never get afraid of losing their body? What if a black hole comes through and it's not an anger thing and a black hole wipes them out?" And God says, "When you do not fear losing your life ever, you have no reason to ever become violent." What about losing? Did I skip a page?
Mm-mm.
No, maybe this isn't the part that I was thinking of. You have no reason to ever become violent. What about losing some? Oh wait, maybe this is Neil talking and not God, and I have it backwards. I'm not sure. Anyway, this is not the part that I was interested in.
Well, it's either Neil or God. It's one of those two that we're talking in this section.
I think it's Neil there. Delete highlight. That's not the part that I was. Let's see. Maybe it was more in here. When you know that your life will never end, you know that anything you wish to experience, you have an eternity to create or to recreate if you've had it once to wish to experience it again.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying in the cosmos, and this is what you were alluding to earlier: eternal life brings eternal peace. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And now skipping ahead to chapter 12. Was there something in chapter? Because these were all kind of quick hitting chapters. Was there something in particular in 12 that that struck you?
Well, chapter 12 starts at the question of how can we practically eliminate violence, and God replies that you need to eliminate the deep-seated humanity belief of separation. And God doesn't summarize. Actually, Neil summarizes very succinctly or very thoroughly that we basically need to replace the separation theology on the planet with a oneness theology so that we can heal our pathology. Um, that was sort of the notion behind the how do we eliminate violence, and that is to eliminate the deep-seated humanity belief of separation. Um, the highest truth is that everything is a oneness. So if you see everything as a oneness and that you're a part of oneness, then you kind of get to this place. Well, could you really be violent in that degree towards yourself all the time? It's like no. Like if it's all oneness, you have no reason at all to fight or have anger or be mad because it's like it's just all part of the flow of the same energy.
Yeah. And after Neil puts all those ologies together, God basically says, "You have put this all perfectly. This is shared with great clarity." So that is really that in a nutshell. And if you're interested in really diving deep into overcoming or seeing through that illusion of that we're separate, there's one
Yeah.
whole book called Communion with God. Maybe if we're going to continue doing book discussions, maybe that's the next one we do. It's based on the 10 illusions and how they're all designed so that we have this experience of being separate when we're not separate. And instead of smashing the illusion, it's more about starting to use them for their intended purpose so you could have this separate experience, even though we're one. And it's really it's probably one of my favorite books other than the original trilogy, and maybe this one might be up there too. We haven't finished it yet, so I have to say the jury's still out.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a great book, just all on illusions and the separation and getting back to oneness or whatnot.
Yeah, the energy that comes up with that is that you're kind of alluding to it's like a higher form of knowing where it sounds like you know what you know.
Right. Well, it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Like when you're not awakened to that it's the Matrix, you're just like going on with the illusion. But once you realize that that whole world was designed for experience, then Neo can fly, stop bullets. He's like manipulating the matrix and manipulating the illusion to serve whatever he's looking to create in that moment. In much similar way, those illusions separating us give us the ability to be separate, but still have the experience of doing that creation. Where in the oneness, everything's already created, and you can't have the experience of creating everything because it's already there. And so the whole part of the illusion is so we can have that experience experientially, not just conceptually, in a nutshell. Cool. And if anyone has questions, of course, feel free to ask questions and comments or just make a comment if you have something that you like to add and contribute.
Mhm.
And let's see, what else was in book 12? Oh, book
Yeah.
12.
And
Was,
thanks for tuning in if you're watching. Thank you. We appreciate it. We're grateful to have you. Um, yeah, it's really, I mean, separation was really the big topic in this chapter, and the idea that highly evolved beings know there's no separation. And it's the most important thing we could choose right now is to eliminate separation and move towards a oneness theology. Um, and as Neil exclaims in the audio, oneness is not a characteristic of life. Life is a characteristic of oneness.
ooh,
That was
was that
a
on the next
fun
page, maybe?
quote. I'm not sure where in the chapter it is.
Well, I'll highlight it when I see it. But this was the one that was sticking out to me, is that it's not just an idea that life is eternal of coming into the oneness. This is the quote. They not only know that life is eternal, they know there is no separation in the universe of anything from anything. And even science is starting to show us that with like entanglement and
Mm-hmm.
um, quantum physics and things of that nature that scientifically is starting to be shown too.
Yeah.
Oh, here
Well,
we
just
go.
wait. Chapter 15, we'll get a brief, quick summary of metaphysics.
I really need to re-listen to that. Like I went through that and you know it was like super simple. Like I think it just grazed right off my head when I went the
I'm
first.
not sure many people would describe chapter 15 as super simple. It had quite a few head turner concepts in there.
Okay, well we'll get to it. But here's a quote that Sean mentioned: "Oneness is not a characteristic of life. Life is a characteristic of oneness." That would be a very powerful message to share and powerfully put. Mm-hmm.
And we're sharing it. And
And we're
Neil's
sharing
sharing
it.
it.
So, is there anything else
And
here?
you could share it. Would you be willing to share it?
You know, and for that matter, if you find that you do have an easy time with these ideas and these concepts, one of the things that you can do is simply contribute that knowing to those people around you. And if you don't have it, contribute this information to people around you. God, or in the CWG material, um, God would say that the fastest way to have something is to cause another to have it. And so if you're looking to bring a certain element into your life, hold, like if you're holding a group like we're holding and you're helping to get the word out about these concepts, that in and of itself helps you to anchor it and to have it for yourself. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're skipping ahead a bit. And the whole idea with any of these concepts is, if you know something, the idea is that you empower others to know what you know, which is marvelously wonderful, and that it shows up in this work. And then it's also one of the primary tenets of access consciousness that Hank and I both follow as a modality. And you see it show up in both places where it's about the empowerment of others to know what they know. And that's really what the awakening is about. It's not creating the separation of, well, we know and we're awakened and you're not. It's um, empowering you to start to know what you know so that everyone can start to operate from a place of knowing and an awakenedness
and
to choose something greater.
it wasn't my intention to jump ahead. I was pulling from the the basic text, and that was for anything, whether you're looking to bring abundance into your life or astrology into your life or anything else. You just help another to have it, and you're acknowledging that you have it to give in a sense, and then it's puts you in a state of allowance of the energy that's already there to begin with. But anyhow, yeah, but I guess they do talk about that later in this book, so it might have looked like skipping ahead.
Yeah, I believe it was. I believe it's in one of the upcoming chapters for today.
Cool. Well, then, just a hop, skip, and a jump, we'll get there. Let's
And a
see.
hop, skip, and a jump, and a turn of the page.
Okay, so I'll turn the page. Go. Chapter 13, my favorite number.
13 is Hank's favorite number.
Well, I was born on the 13th, so I thought it was a great number. So,
Yeah, was it a Friday?
no, I wish it was. It was a Tuesday, I believe. So, but this is one of the things that I wanted to, I believe we talked about kind of going through these bullet points. Um, and this is actually saying you may want to memorize this or at least put it in a place where you see it often.
Mm-hmm.
And this is talking about awakened, how awakened species do or don't operate. Do you want to just go through it alternating reading, or would we rather just me read or you read? What would you like to do?
Well, we could alternate. But to summarize what this is, it is 16 characteristics of an awakened species.
Cool. I'll take the odds and you can take the evens. So, an awakened species sees the unity of all life and lives into it. Humans, in an unawakened state, often deny or ignore it.
Um,
Or do you want to talk about each one?
no, whoops. How do I make this bigger? It's very small on my screen.
Let's see if I can make it bigger on my screen. Is that better?
Yeah, it is.
I could also do that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's relevant to cover all 16 of these in detail, Hank.
Okay.
Certainly encourage, if you have the book, to check these out. And if there's one or two or five or 16 that pop out for you, let us know. Or if you have questions about it, or if you would like us to read them all, let us know. But I think that the biggest one, because they talk about it more in chapter 15, is number 1. It appears that a lot of the rest of the book is dedicated to going through these each individually, Hank.
Okay.
Like
Well,
chapter 15 is number 1, and then I read ahead in chapter 16, it talks about number 2. So I think we will have thorough discussion on each of these
okay.
as we go through our book club.
Well, I'm glad that you read ahead, so you saved us from doing that now without the context around each one. Cool. So just kind of
We
skim.
can read number 1 though, if you'd like to read number 1, because
Well,
it is very relevant.
I'll read number 1 again then. An
Read
awakened
it again.
species sees the unity of all life and lives into it. Humans in an unawakened state often deny it or ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we'll skip ahead to through 16. But if you're watching and you want to read them right now, you can just pause the video and you can read through them a little bit more in depth. And I'm going to read 13 because it's my favorite number. An awakened species never competes. Humans in an unawakened state are often in competition with each other. And actually, that's one of my favorite little sayings in business. I say it's collaboration over competition. And there's a principle in business even where blue ocean, where businesses can cooperate and they're not backstabbing each other like red ocean. So how great would it be if in all areas we could cooperate and collaborate instead of compete? And let's see.
I get it, because the ocean becomes red because of all the blood when you fight. But remember, highly evolved beings don't have a need for violence.
That's true.
So would a highly evolved being ever choose red ocean?
No.
They couldn't even fathom it.
Yeah, and that was one of the points in the chapter before this, is that highly evolved beings, they can't even entertain a violent thought. It doesn't even come across their radar any longer because they couldn't even think about hurting someone else either physically
Mm-hmm.
or emotionally. They were very specific to point that out too, and I
Yeah.
would even add mentally. any sort of violence at all.
Yeah, actually, what I did have that jumped out of me. So concepts 5, 6, and 7. I know I said we weren't going to read these in detail, and I don't think we need to read them. But it's basically that in a highly evolved being doesn't really have a, well, they say principle here, but they don't embrace some of the principles we have here, such as justice, punishment, insufficiency, or what's the last one?
Um,
Or
not embrace
ownership.
ownership. Okay,
So
and
so there's no idea of justice, punishment, insufficiency, or ownership. Those four things are something that are principles that highly evolved beings don't embrace.
yeah, and I can see like with justice, punishment, and insufficiency, these are also things that are covered in that communion with God book with the 10 illusions. So I can see a little bit of parallels from what they're saying here to some of the other works.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
and like number 6 is that idea is that there is enough. I think that might have, is that one of the illusions as
It
well, that
is.
there's a lack.
Yeah, that scarcity exists in reality. There's enough food, abundance, medicine, clothing. There's enough of everything for everyone to be comfortable and have everything that they quote unquote need.
Yeah. So would you be willing to embrace the idea that there is enough? Would you be willing to be that radical and different and operate from a space that there is enough? It may not seem like it at the moment, or in the last 10 seconds, or the last 10 years. What would it be like if you started to operate from a place and thinking of there is enough? What might change?
Yeah. And one of the other ones that's not here, but it feeds into that illusion a lot, is the idea that superiority exists. Because when you do look at the resources on this planet, if you want to look at money specifically, what percentage of the world's wealth is held by what percentage of people? And it's a very small percentage holding a great amount of the world's wealth. And the idea with that is sometimes that maybe people think that they have entitlement or that they're superior to other people or they have the great idea. But what if people really did look at everyone else as an equal and look at us as a single species having a common experience, but from a place of oneness? What would the wealth picture look like if those ideals were truly embraced by the entire population? How quickly would that wealth redistribute and people start taking care of each other if they really embrace that knowing? So,
Yeah, and I have to say on this before we leave, if you're looking for a good example of what this might look like or what this could look like, I highly encourage you to check out a book. It's by Robert Heinlein called Stranger in a Strange Land. It was written like in 1960. In the way that Heinlein depicts these concepts through one of his characters, Michael Valentine Smith, is really phenomenal. He's a Martian that he's a Martian. He's an Earthling um, that was born on Mars and raised by Martians, and then comes to Earth. Um, and he embraces a lot or shows a lot of uh, not having
oops,
uh, he doesn't have ideas of ownership. He doesn't have, we're going to do this.
there,
There
okay.
we go. He doesn't have this idea of insufficiency or violence. They're because he was raised on Mars by Martians, right? He has no idea of these earthly concepts that are, you know, completely foreign to him. And it's kind of humorous as well because he has to bumble, around and learn what life on Earth is like because it's radically different from what he experiences. But it's just a great book, and it it had a lot of insights and opened my eyes to a lot of new ways of thinking as well. And honestly, it has a lot of congruency with conversations with God in general. So Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. And it's kind of fun because it's a work of fiction. So it has a little bit different flavor than the conversation format presented here.
That's cool. Who says we can possibly do book clubs for other things that aren't like CWG? We can consider that possibly for the future too. We
Hmm.
want to tackle some of those cool things. especially when it has like a metaphysical theme. And it's really fun when people don't necessarily write it for metaphysical purposes, but there's a ton of it in there just because of how they're inspired. And it's neat to see spirit working through people that way. All right. Was okay. After these 16 things, was there something else in this chapter that?
Yeah. Right at the end of the chapter, there's a great part that it's celebrate that you know, and celebrate your growth of knowingness. And yeah,
Oops, I went too far. Oops, now I went back too far. 14. Here we go. Celebrate that you know that you know. Maybe it's not on this page. Possibly. Let's go back one more. Celebrate. Here we go. Celebrate that you know what you know. Celebrate that you clearly see the difference between your behaviors and behaviors that you may decide are more beneficial. Which reminds me of an axis thing. If you want a different possibility, choose different. And I use that on my kids all the time. Why, what could you do to create a different possibility here after I have to punish them or something like that, or after I choose to rectify bad behavior, quote unquote.
yeah.
I really enjoyed this. I'm not
And
going to read it, but this whole thing about the Earth and like its snapshot, like if the whole history of the
yeah,
year was Earth was a year long, like all the timeline of how young of a species we are, really.
yeah. This section is taken from a work called New World, New Mind by Robert Ornstein and Paul Eltrick, Elrich. Robert
Ehrlich,
Ornstein and
or
Paul Elrich.
it's a German last name for sure. I just not I could ask him to
Yeah.
pronounce it.
And
But
basically, they put the perspective of if you crammed like 12 million years of Earth's history and put it on a scale of one calendar year, where 12 midnight on January 1st is like the dawn of the Earth, you know, humans don't show up until December 31st in the afternoon as like Cro-Magnons, and what we call our species of Homo sapiens doesn't exist until like 11:59 p.m. on December 31st of this year, and recorded history is the last minute of the entire year. Just to give this sense of how young humanity is as a species. So it's just kind of a cool perspective changer. Yeah, I liked it too, Hank.
yeah, the dinosaurs arrive on December 10th and disappear on Christmas Day. Boom, boom. It was just really what's the word I want? Sobering, I guess. It just really puts things in perspective when you think we're such a big deal, but we're at a blink of an eye. We haven't even been here that long. Oh, and here we go. That puts it into perspective beautifully, and it creates a context within which we it can now be understood why in human societies most people deny much of what they see. They even deny their personal feelings and eventually their own truth.
Yeah, and I kind of like it because it kind of gets you out of time a little bit, as time is a significance. Because I'm going to say as an infinite being or as a highly evolved being, would you ever not have enough time if you knew that you were going to, be forever and there was nothing that could kill you or change that? Like you might change forms to be in a spirit only, and not have a physical body. But if you knew that you couldn't be destroyed, wouldn't that mean that you have forever to do anything that you'd like? So if there's something you couldn't change or thought you couldn't do, well, what if you had 100 years? What if you had 1,000 years? What if you had millennia? Like, would that change how you go about thinking about your day to day beingness? Maybe. And what would it be like to pull from that perspective and pull it into your daily, I'm going to say daily beingness in the world? Would that create anything different for you? How about you, Hank? Would that create anything different?
Well, really, why get bent out of shape if something doesn't happen right away? Or and also knowing that hey, if I have all of eternity to experience that, I'm going to fully enjoy what I'm experiencing right now, and that's what I'll just do that next. It kind of puts a relaxation around it. Uh,
Yeah, you don't have to hurry to anything because you have forever.
there's there's another book by Neil. It's called Happier Than God, and in that book he goes over what he calls the mechanism of manifestation, in which there's five parts. The first part is the law of attraction or the statement of intention, then the law of opposites, the gift of discernment, the wonder of imagination, and the final one is the presence of cycles, meaning that you have an eternity of experiences in different shapes and forms, and uh, that basically you have all of eternity to create whatever you'd like. And that book really dives deep into that whole process if you want to take a deeper dive than what we're talking about right now. But it all comes down to you have eternity. However, when you do choose to create, he makes the point of saying keep vigilant in whatever your choice is, and you congruently choose everything towards that choice, because we have a bad habit, perhaps, as humans, that we choose something, we say we want something, and we say that in this 10 seconds, and in the next 10 seconds, we're choosing something different already. And the universe doesn't even have a chance to start setting things up to bring it to us. So you do have eternity. However, things could happen a lot more quickly if we actually stayed congruent with what we're choosing and align everything that we're choosing and being towards whatever it is we're looking to experience.
Dang. Man, Hank, you just hammered that home. I mean, you hit on one of the 16 key things that were in chapter 13. That was number I wrote it down because I liked it. Number 3 of that is an awakened being says one thing and then does it.
Right. Well, I wasn't even trying to do that. I'm just pulling from, I've been studying CWG material since '97, and so like it's all this. And when things
Yeah,
like parallel, I like to pull it forward and let people know, hey, there's a
yeah,
much deeper dive we can take. That was one
yeah.
of my favorite little
And
books.
I loved it. You started touching on the vibration and focusing a vibration, which we cover in chapter 15 coming up in our talk about the brief meta history, all your metaphysics, maybe. But yeah, I mean, just really great points there, Hank. I mean, you really nailed it. I
It's
give you an A+ for that part.
Thank you. It just makes my day to have your blessing.
Yeah.
But that brings us, I believe, that brings us to, unless there was something else from chapter 13, bringing us to chapter 14. And this is where Neil says, you won me
Well,
over. Wait, okay, so you got one more
Well,
thing.
there was a good part about chapter at the end of chapter 13. Neil asked, "Must we wait for the entire species, or most of the species, to awaken before we choose to be awakened?" And the answer is a resounding no. You're not supposed to wait. It's really about who on Earth will celebrate fully their true nature and who will joyously co-create the wonderful days that lie ahead when they do so. So there's no wow, we have to wait for all of humanity before we get to start experiencing divinity or stepping up to be part of our true nature. We can just start choosing it. In fact, we're encouraged to start.
Definitely. The more awakened each individual, like if everybody just chose to really do their work to be as awakened as they can be in that moment. We've talked about it before on many of our streams. There's this concept called the Maharishi effect, where when
100th
1%,
monkey.
100th monkey, well, that was in the book called The 100th Monkey, but in the book it was called the Maharishi effect that they're talking about. And the monkeys is one example of it. But when a certain percentage of a species have an awareness around something, that awareness then jumps to the rest of the species. And it wasn't just monkeys. They did an experiment with mice in water mazes in England and the States, where when a certain population of a certain type of rat had the awareness of this one rats in other laboratories that had never run the maze before could go through it the first time without having to learn the maze like the original population. So there were a lot of examples with that. So what if we just have to each choose to do our little part, and then the rest of humanity will just get it? How easy would that be?
Yeah.
All you
Beautiful.
do is choose.
I suppose we can take down the Robert Heinlein book there.
Which
Um,
book?
oh, just the banner.
Oh, yes, probably. You already got it. But yeah.
But yeah, on to chapter 14, which chapter 14 has a title called "A Short Commentary on Number One from List Given in Chapter 13." So this is about, we said when we were in chapter 13, the last chapter, point number one, which was about never, everything is a oneness. That's basically what this whole chapter is about.
Well, one thing that jumps right out to me too, like how they were saying that they see the unity in all of life. It says that they can, because they exist in another dimension, they can actually see this visually, not just conceptually. They're able to view and the submolecular structure of all things. I used a matrix example again towards the end when he was able to see the code and see it for what it was instead of the illusion part. I kind of draw that
Mm-hmm.
as a parallel to what they're talking about there, but I know I'm skipping ahead maybe.
Yeah. Well, again, Stranger in a Strange Land, really good book if you want to understand a little bit of how this might look. Great depictions of a highly evolved being doing this and being this, like as just part of their course of their day, um, in such a fun manner. So I encourage, if you're looking for some examples, check out Stranger in a Strange Land. Plug number 2.
I'll plug it at least one more time before the stream is
At
over.
least one more time. Um, yeah. This is like a really cool chapter. Maybe as we flip through it, in that
And here's a Star Wars reference for people. They even used the word force.
they do.
They observe that there is only one energy in the universe, one source or force, and that this source or force simply mixes up the foundational elements of which it is comprised, adding some and subtracting others, then alters the vibrational frequency of those variously combined elements to generate different expressions of the essential essence. Ooh. It's get a little heavy there for some people maybe. But at the end of the day, think of in Star Wars how they have the metachlorians and the Force, and the more aware you are of that life force energy, the more you can manipulate your surrounding experience.
Yeah. And it's not just the life force energy, to speak poignantly into what they talk about in this chapter, is that every molecule has consciousness. So when you're speaking to, well, I think they talk about it at the elemental level, is how they describe it here. But as you're speaking to the elemental level, every element of life is imbued with divine intelligence to the maximum it can be imbued, which is going into 15. But it's just that everything has a consciousness to it. All the molecules, all the molecular structures, they all have consciousness, and they're all vibrating, and we're able to commune and communicate and speak to all the molecules. And that's something that a highly evolved being will do all the time. And that's where they're saying, as a highly evolved being, they really speak to these molecules and can choose and change them and ask them to shift and be different. Um, and that generally is not happening in here. Now, there are people on the planet that
Gary Douglas.
can do this.
We were watching a video, Global Foundation, and all the people in the audience watching Gary and Dane, they were really uncomfortable seats. And Gary, who's the founder of Access, switching modalities a little bit, he just told everybody, well, it's simple. Just ask the molecules in the chair to conform to be more comfortable for your butt. And people did it and it worked for them. And so what if things were that easy where you just connect with the molecules of whatever it is you're working with and you ask for it to shift and allow it to shift would be the second part of it. Ask and then be willing to receive. But here we go. What you call the elemental level is consciousness. It is consciousness in action. Every cell of your body acts with intelligence. You can't so much as cut your little finger without creating a cellular rush to the site of the injury to repair the damage. You think the cells of your body don't know what they are doing and why? And I tell you, every element of the universe is imbued with this foundational intelligence, which is the quote you were alluding to in just a moment. And then Neil's like, "Oh my God," and God says, "Precisely." I love that. I'm gonna highlight that too. Cool, cool. Mm-hmm. And just to add a shamanic note, we say in shamanism everything is consciousness, or everything is conscious because it's part of the same animated life essence. It's all part of the same force energy. So even though this is some modern language that they're using with the cells and everything, this goes back to the fundamental understandings of how everything works from some of our most indigenous traditions on the planet. They had the understanding of everything being conscious. We just didn't know what a cell was at that point, but they had the awareness of it. And now science is just catching up to those initial awarenesses, which is really fun. Oh, we still have the Stranger in the Strange Land thing up too. Let me switch to the questions. If anybody watching has questions, and even if you're watching on the replay, if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and make it. And the next time we stream for the next set of chapters, we can go back and bring up questions that were asked from the previous streams. So please feel free to make comments, and ideally on the YouTube link, so that way we have them all in one place. But we will do our best to check all the places that we're streaming to. Which by a reminder too, if you're watching and you have been commenting and we haven't responded, if you're not commenting on the YouTube channel or like Sean's page or my page, we're not seeing the comments. So it's very important to go to YouTube and make the comments there so we can see them. Very good.
Go to YouTube. Use it.
Go to YouTube, use it. While you're there, please subscribe. Let's see. Some things the universe works a lot more simply than we think. We try to make it more complex than it needs to be.
Yeah, they begin in this part to really get into your thoughts and how you're just thinking, and your thoughts can change anything. And there's a citation here of Emily Cole, who is a French psychologist, as they say, and basically, I believe it's she did this study where had some sick people, and it was basically repeating the mantra every day in every way. I'm getting better and better. And they did that 20 times. I think it was at night, in the morning, and in the evening before they go to bed. And it was remarkable how much the people's sickness went away, and they changed everything just by putting that thought into their consciousness and into their being every day. That's really what showed up then.
Yeah. One of the guiding principles or rules of the universe is energy flows where your attention goes. And if you're doing this 10 times in the morning, 10 times at night, you're putting that out into the universe and adding energy that you are getting better and better. Or to throw out another great mantra, all of life comes to me with ease,
Peace, joy,
and
and glory.
yes.
That is the Access mantra. And they say the similar thing. Say it 10 times in the morning, 10 times at night, and your whole life will change. So apparently it also works with every day in every way. I'm getting better and better. Say that 10 times in the morning, 10 times at night.
Right. And then they were asking about the results, and a remarkable percentage of the patients got better. This is also paralleling. Have you heard of? I'm going to mispronounce it. Hopo ono ono or something like that. It's
Yeah, I have heard it. Yeah.
the same thing. Like this psychologist was in a hospital where he would write down, walk around with the patient's chart and basically saying, "I love you, I forgive you, thank you." I forget, it's like 5 different little phrases, but everybody in the hospital got better. So there's really something to be said. Energy flows where your attention goes, and if you can focus on things that are going to create more lightness in your life, it just starts to create this upward spiral, which we can see in a lot of different modalities of people taking this concept and putting it to use for them. Very cool. My heavens, can it then be possible to get most of the cells of the body to choose the same thing most of the time?
Bingo.
This is the same question you're asking yourselves right now regarding the rest of the people on the planet. This sounds a lot like the 100th monkey that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Oops, did I pass? Oh, I didn't go by down a page by accident. And the answer is it is possible through alignment. What energy could we be as a species to allow every consciousness on this planet to align with ease for the greater possibility of mankind? That would be a great question to affirm every day, multiple times a day. The choice to act co-jointly in unison and in harmony with each other is made by elements of life where there is an alignment on purpose within the sector or area where those elements exist. On a side note, you know Michelle Falcone, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Of course.
she did a. If you go back on her Facebook page, which is like Home to Your Heart, or I think it's
Come home to your heart.
Come Home to Your Heart. She had this awareness that between like the pandemic, with everybody's focus on the virus, and then the riots, and so much of the world's focus on these single events, that it was a great opportunity because we all had a single focus for us to really start acting more together as a species versus separate, so that these huge things that the whole world is made aware of, and there's all this attention on one single thing. What potency could we be if we choose possibility? What could we actually accomplish in this auspicious time? Like this book said, well, this is written in 2016, but it's so relevant for everything happening today, even more relevant now than it was 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
Yeah, and what jumped into my head there, one of your top mantras or things that you like, that what you resist persists. Uh,
Yeah, what you
I guess I was going that way, but yeah, never mind. It doesn't quite fit.
well, and it's more of a Ryan EET thing, but I think it's also in CWG in the original three books. And the whole idea with that is you're still focusing on what you're resisting, and attention goes where your energy flows, where your attention goes. And if you're focused on resisting all this stuff, you're still putting your attention on it and still giving it energy. And the universe only knows energy, and so you're actually feeding away, in a way, that which you're not choosing to have in your life. Where instead, if you're just an allowance of it, it could pass through you, not to you, like a cloud through the sky. When you don't have the resistance to it, it doesn't become a big deal. You're not giving it energy, and then it just shifts and moves and changes. There you go. Well, you're on top of it
Yeah,
today with all the banners.
yeah. Which really, when we say this, it's like your attention goes to what you're thinking about. So if you're thinking about weird and drear and doom and gloom, well, that's what you're going to attract. Which, I mean, not to get into Abraham Hicks' law of attraction, but
It's
I
real.
mean, it really is. Your thoughts do make a big difference in what shows up, and that's how come Hank and I really enjoy the Access Consciousness and the tools they have, is because they're tools that put some different thoughts in your day to day routine that assist you with dealing with things when they show up.
Yeah. And just something that's coming up for me to share too, in access, and it might even be, I have to see if it's anywhere in CWG, but the whole idea of being self first, not selfish. And one of the ideas for bringing abundance into your life is when you get your paycheck, or if you're self employed, every dollar that you make, you take a little bit and you put it aside for you as an honoring of you. You're telling the universe that you're important, and you're telling the universe that you're honoring what you're doing and the value that's coming to you. And then your energy flows where your attention goes, right? So you're focusing on you honoring you by taking a little bit and setting it aside. Then the universe brings you more. But if you're getting the money and you can't save anything because you have scarcity and you're focused on the scarcity, what's the end result? So just a little example of how that might work practically for everyone. Oh, Dr. K, did you want to come on with us? She was saying, hi, I'm coming on a bit late. I can definitely send you the link. She was interested in coming on and talking with us about this stuff, but I think we were only planning an hour, Dr. K, so we're going to be wrapping soon, but I'm happy to send you the link still, because we can always go a little longer. Let me send it to her.
Yeah,
You met
I mean,
Dr. K before, right?
no.
No? There we go. Anyway, Dr. K is one of the affiliates at HHH. She is a functional medicine doctor, and she has biofeedback machines, and she does pranic healing, but then she's also like an ankle and foot doctor by trade, surgeon by trade. So it's cool because a lot of our conversation, she's able to speak to some things that I could never speak to. So it's a pretty cool combination of energies to have on any metaphysical call. She can bring a cool another perspective. All right. So give her a second for that. Was there anything else in this chapter that was the soul is God in us? So that's a pretty cool little phrase too.
Well,
Just kind of skimming through, but it's kind of jumping out at me.
yeah, it's it's a pretty potent chapter. I I don't really have anything specific to cover other than I would encourage, if you haven't read this particular chapter, I would encourage you to read it and see what jumps out for you. Because it's kind of in that style where if you haven't bumped into some of the stuff they're talking about here before, it can really be a new perspective to enjoy and to play with and go see if it will work for you and incorporate it into your life. There was a lot of that type of stuff I felt in this chapter that may be a contribution to you that we didn't talk about. So of course, encouraging to read the book and support Neil
Yeah,
since
I know we mentioned it on almost every call. I haven't done it on this one yet. Highly recommend the Audible version because it has Neil playing himself and two voices going back and forth between God, one male and one female, and it helps to get out of the preconceived notions that we've been taught about God. So I really
Mhm.
enjoy that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this for just a moment. We'll add Dr. K. Hi, Dr. K. How are you?
Hi. I'm hopping on late, so late.
It's all right. Better late than never. Since you're just joining us, why don't you just do a brief introduction since people might not be as familiar with you, so they have a little bit of background to go with the face?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm Dr. K, but Dr. Krivyak, since my last name's so complicated, we just go by Dr. K. I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I also do quantum biofeedback therapies. I do pranic healing, homeopathics. So I have a plethora, and I am a foot and ankle surgeon by training. I have recently, within the past, it's almost 2 years now, switched from traditional medicine to do more integrated medicine because I think there's just a larger need for me there, and that's a higher purpose of mine. I couldn't give all those meds anymore. I wasn't doing people justice, and people just really need help with stress and anxiety and by far changing the way they perceive things. So I hop in at the perfect time where it says energy goes where your attention goes. And I'm like, yes, I have that little line right in my kitchen. It's just like a little thing. It says energy goes where your thoughts flow. I'm like, I came in just at the right time.
That's even better. Energy goes where your thoughts flow. Let's get that up there instead.
Your thought patterns will create what you consistently think about. That's what you're going to start manifesting and creating. So
And if you're thinking randomly throughout the day, like something different every 2 seconds, like what is that going to create versus if you choose that you want to, let me rephrase that. If you choose that you're going to receive something very specific in your life and you align, like we were just talking in the book, I had it highlighted even. When you look here, it says, and the answer is through possible alignment to co-jointly in the unison and all harmony with each other. Well, that is also to say within yourself, harmony of all the things that you're being and doing, all towards whatever you're choosing to bring into your life. And so consistency is key. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. K and I do another stream on Fridays at 10 a.m. on basically different topics. So if you want to check us out on Fridays, that's always a fun topic. This week is going to be all about attachments. So
yes, all sorts of attachments. It's a time. I don't know. Should we? I'm not going to spill any beans.
Like PowerPoints, Word documents, those types of attachments.
No.
Oh, not those. You mean like the emotional kind?
Yeah, and I think the biggest right now, though. Sorry, I'm kind of outside here. The biggest people are, like we said in our last session. When did we get to the point that we are so attached to life or to death that we stop living? We or to life, we are so attached to the fear of death. And
Yeah.
death is such a heavy word. I don't even like to use that term.
Actually
Yeah.
covered that in this discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Highly
Yeah.
evolved beings. I'm just trying to find it. Yeah, because we were talking about how highly evolved beings, there's no violence because they realize that they're eternal. They can never not exist,
Right.
and so that
Right.
the fear of dying and all that is just gone, and it eliminated all violence. But here we go. They know that they cannot lose their life for any reason or in any way, nor can they lose anything else of value to them because nothing else is of value to them other than life itself. Their very existence. Yep.
Right. And that's kind of that's part of what we'll talk about Friday, because I think if COVID was just a rash that you got and there wasn't this, oh, you're going to die from it, I think this whole thing would be perceived completely differently. So it's this mongering fear, when there's one thing it's guaranteed, we're going to leave this planet at some point. So I think people forget that.
Yeah. The consciousness is continuous. You never don't exist. You merely change form, just like in the first chapters of the book. We're covering 11 through 15 tonight. But if you go back, anybody who's watching, you can go back and watch the first couple streams. Highly evolved beings can just manifest into physicality and go back into non-physicality on a whim. So just because we leave the planet at some point doesn't mean we don't come back. We've all had multiple lifetimes and that type of thing. So.
Yep. So no fear then. There's much less fear, but sorry, I missed all the exciting stuff.
That's all right.
Well, it's always all exciting, so you can't really not come in at the exciting part or miss an exciting part.
Maybe that's what I needed to hear is this last line.
And let's see. And now hear what they were saying, and then we'll finish up the chapter, I believe. And your soul is the source of the energy of the essential essence that resides within you. The soul is God in us. It is indeed not just in thought, not just in word, but indeed. The soul is the expression, now individualized, of the being that is God. It is God being manifested.
Yes, love it. Love it.
You've never read any of the books before, have you? Is this like your first?
I read the first one. I didn't read the others.
Cool.
So this is all cool stuff.
Let's see. Was there anything
I have
else?
to catch up on my books.
Sean, was there anything else in 14, or are we gonna move on to 15 now?
No, I think we're good, and I think we have a choice if we'd like to go with chapter 15 because it's pretty metaphysics. It's actually called Metaphysics 101, a short course in ultimate reality.
So are you saying you want to hold off till next time for 15?
I think we could choose what we'd like to do. It is a little more technical than some of the other chapters. And I know Dr. K just joined us. So I'm like, well...
It won't come as any kind of a shock to me. But it could be a new... you can give us a little prelude to it.
Yeah, I think maybe that will be the tease, is that next time, Hank, we'll be doing Chapter 15, Metaphysics 101, a short course in ultimate reality, as told by God.
I think Chapter 15 could be a standalone stream, you think? Or we'll be able to do 15 plus some?
Ooh, it might be fun to do it as a standalone.
Okay. Well, then why don't you give us a little tease? What do we have to look forward to, Sean, for Chapter 15 when we get to it?
We have fun looking at the elements of life at the very smallest molecular type level and how it's imbued with divine intelligence and how that ties into our thought patterns and that kind of stuff in real metaphysics type. How do we create the world that we're in? How does it operate? The nitty gritty, as told and taught by God.
And I'll say there are some people that I've known that have gone to Rishi's Metaphysical Institute, literally study 20 or 30 years to get through the whole curriculum. And we're going to give it all to you in one chapter, one stream. for next time. How was that? Was that dramatic?
I love it.
How does it get any better than that?
That's awesome.
Well, in closing, then, what any closing thoughts? I know Dr. K just joined us though, but we're gonna. Well, next Tuesday there's a possibility that we won't be streaming because I may be traveling and my internet connection may or may not be good. If I can stream, I will, but I'll be on my phone or tablet probably. So Sean will be mostly running the board. Probably I can get you access to the book if we're able to do it, and if not, maybe we can pick a different day, or we would just skip until the next time. What would be lightest? But
What would be fun?
We can choose once we know if I'm going to have internet or not. Any final thoughts?
Final thought. How can you be more you today and bring about the divinity within you to experience your own beingness?
Ooh. And I'm going to throw the little quote from Neil: "In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not." And then when you say that, when things are looking not preferred, if you remember that part of the whole concept of the duality is to give you a contextual field in order to have the knowing and the experiential knowing of whatever it is you're choosing to create. It adds a little bit of lightness to whatever it is you think is so bad. In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not, because then you can find gratitude for whatever is showing up in your world that you think you don't want, because it's actually giving you the context so you can experientially know who you're going to be. How about that one?
That's a bunch of double negatives.
It is. It's on purpose. It makes the brain go, WTF, mate? What was that about?
I had to keep track of that. I'm like, wait.
I guess I can remove this too. And how about you, Dr. K? It's your first little.
Well, I mean, since I was on late, let's see, being more in the presence process, because the past is gone, the future's not here. All you have is right now, and it's always right now. So,
yep.
You'll get tired worrying, and I'm guilty of this too, worrying about the next. So where can you be in the presence right now and align yourself with your divinity and just be,
there's I forget which one of his books it's in. He gives like a presence meditation. And basically what Neil says is, as you walk down the street, as you go about your day, and every single moment you say, I am that, I am. And it's a way to start acknowledging that, may the God in me greet the God in thee for the highest good type of thing, like the namaste concept, because you're reminding yourself throughout the day that you are that, and you are also you.
Exactly.
Oh, we got to plug Stranger in a Strange Land one more time. Oh, thou art God.
Oh, let's put it back up to Stranger in a Strange Land. There we go. We brought it up many, many times tonight. It's been a focal point. And I assume you said it was about a Martian on Earth, and he had to figure out how
it's about an Earthling who he's born on a spaceship that lands on Mars, and then he ends up getting left on Mars on accident, something along that line. So he's raised by Martians in Mars with totally Martian ideas of culture, and then later in life he ends up back on planet Earth, but he has no concept of any of Earth's customs. So it's sort of this it's somewhat hilarity and somewhat very insightful into, if you just got plopped on planet Earth with no concept of the things that you and I would value, what would your experience be? And there's just so many great ties to the ideas and concepts in CwG. And thou art God.
Yeah.
Imagine now if we suddenly went back in time and you were in the Renaissance, where they were doing horrible things to people as punishments and having wars and all these bloodbaths and everything. What would that would be kind of our version of being a stranger in a strange land now. Like, we think we're so far evolved. And if someone from the future came back and saw us now, they'd be like, what are you guys doing? Changing your perception around things can definitely shift your point of view around it. How evolved are we? How evolved are we?
Well, your point of view creates your reality.
It's true. Cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. Dr. K, thanks for joining us just for a little bit.
Well, I'll join next time. Let me know what you guys decide. And I think next Tuesday I have a client 6 to 7, but I'll do my best to get on if you decide to move forth.
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's always fun having another voice on the stream too, because people might
It's
get
not
bored
just about
just being
medicine. I
John.
mean, the mind is such a huge contributor to medicine. It's not just the body. So I preach and teach this stuff too.
Body, being, and beyond, which is in the closing video that I'll play.
I love that. I'm
So
stealing that.
everyone, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Reminder, in the comments, we did post a link to the playlist just for the CwG material, and you can go there to see our discussion on chapters 1 through 10. And today was chapter 11 through 14. We'll start with 15 next time, whether it's next week or later, and we'll find out.
Yay.
All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.